Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the LAFCO meeting. This meeting will now come to order, and we'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance after the roll call. So, could we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Jacob?
Here.
Commissioner McKenzie?
Here.
Commissioner Desmond?
Here.
Commissioner Kersey?
Here.
Commissioner Solis? Absent. Commissioner Vanderman?
Present.
Commissioner Wells? Absent. Commissioner Willis?
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Cox is absent. Alternate Commissioner Lump? Here. Alternate Commissioner Kate is absent. And alternate Commissioner McNamara?
Here.
Alternate Commissioner Mathis?
Present.
And alternate Commissioner McNamara will vote in place of Commissioner Wells, who is absent. There is a quorum.
Commissioner Solis just entered the room. You want to call her name?
Commissioner Solis?
Just for the record. Everyone would please stand. We'll now have the Pledge of Allegiance. Sandy?
Please join me as we pledge allegiance to our flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Team, we have any agenda revisions?
There are no changes to the agenda itself, Chair, but Commissioners, I did just want to highlight that of the 3 public hearings that we came into today's hearing anticipating having, one we did need to cancel. That's 6B as in boy. That's the Valley Center Sphere of Influence updates. And we canceled by way of the need to perfect our noticing. That said, if there's anyone in the audience who came down today with the hope of talking about the topic, they certainly can, but it would need to be done during the general public comment period, with the follow-up on our end having to wait until we get to the hearing, which I anticipate being in April. So other than that clarification, we are good.
Thank you. Is there anyone here to speak on 6B? Okay, we'll proceed then with public comments, and we have one request. Tom Kennedy?
Thank you. My name is Tom Kennedy with Rainbow Municipal Water District. I just came to give the Commission an update on what you probably heard about as a pending application for reorganization from the Rainbow Municipal Water District and also Fallwood Public Utility District. We've been working on this for a little while, and the core of this comes down to how to interpret the statutes regarding the County Water Authority Act, which governs how agencies enter or leave the County Water Authority. In 1953, Rainbow used those same processes to join the County Water Authority, paid our application, our admittance fees, and became a member, and now we seek to use the same provisions of statute to detach. In accordance with LAFCO Policy L107, we've had consultations with virtually every member agency of the Water Authority, the Water Authority itself, and our main objective was to try to come to some common understanding of what the statute means between our agencies and the County Water Authority. We've been working on this diligently, but unfortunately the County Water Authority has indicated to us in writing that they won't speak to us about their interpretation of the County Water Authority Act, and they're going to bring it here to LAFCO instead. That wasn't our intention or preference, but at this point, after many months of attempting to engage, it's the only thing we're left with. And so we will be filing applications here during March for consideration at LAFCO. But I just wanted to come down and let the Commission know that we've been working hard to try to resolve any kind of dispute or controversy prior to bringing it to this Commission. But to date have been unsuccessful, but we should have the application in soon. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll proceed with our consent items. Item number 5. Any of those items Commissioners wish to have pulled? Jerry?
I just wanted to ask about our reserves team. Is that, how have we...
Why don't we pull it then? Which one is that?
It was talking about
B?
the reserves, yeah. I guess that would be under budget, yes.
5B, we'll pull 5B.
Yes.
Any others? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the consent?
I apologize, Chair. We do have comments requesting discussion on 5E as in E-Lane.
Okay, so we'll pull 5E. So we have 5A, C, D, F, G on a consent motion. Someone like to make it?
I'll make a motion.
We have a motion and a second?
Second.
A second by Commissioner Salas. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Carries unanimously. Do we have to have a roll call vote?
Actually, because we do have a boundary change, we do have to have the roll call. I apologize.
Commissioner Jacobs?
Aye.
Commissioner McKenzie? Aye. Commissioner Desmond?
Yes.
Commissioner Kersey?
Aye.
Commissioner Salas?
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderlin?
Yes.
Commissioner Willis?
Aye.
Alternate Commissioner McNamara?
Aye.
It's unanimous and the motion passes.
Okay, so we'll get used to a roll call. Okay, let's go to 5B.
Yes,
Barry, you had a question?
yes, I did. I was just wondering, it seems like our reserves seem thin to me. Misunderstand how this compares to the past. How have we done in the past in terms of our reserves?
So the reserves themselves are, I would say, are in good shape. I can't really speak to the historical numbers here at LAFCO, but over the last few years, I think we're, in the average. So they're on page 20. Right now, we walked into the fiscal year with 1.4 million in reserves. Now, there are some classifications and assignments of that number, but certainly that is more than 3 months' worth of operating reserves. And if the commission will recall, that was the baseline for LAFCO to operate. So I anticipate having a little more discussion about this at the next meeting, but to answer the question, I think we're in good shape.
Okay, any other questions? Is there a motion? The recommendation is to accept and file.
I'll make a motion.
Item B.
Okay, there's a motion
Second.
and a second on 5B.
No roll call on this one.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So we'll go on to 5E, where we do have some speakers. So let's have a brief staff report first, and then we'll go to the speakers.
So 5D is the regular check-in on the progress report. We had 27 projects listed for the fiscal year. Right now, we've got 3/4 underway. The staff report itself identifies where we are, in particular, the big projects that we have coming up, notably after today, presumably Valley Center will be on the books, and then the next big one after that is CSA 135. But we do have 2 speakers, as the chair mentioned, Laura Hunter and if I mispronounce, I apologize, Neba Ela? Nisa, so close, but by all means, you have 3 minutes.
So good morning, Commissioners. Thank you for taking time to hear us. I have a package of maps. I don't know LAFCO that well, so I don't think I have enough, but I had 9 copies. Anyway, we're here today to urge the Commission to remove the Safari Highlands project from consideration in both this work plan, and then we will be asking for it again under the Sphere of Influence 6C. Due to a lack of compliance requirements with the reorganization. This project was kind of conceived under very different conditions and leadership in our city of Escondido, and frankly, it represents the worst in urban sprawl. It destroys open space, including the South County MSDP. It would be highly inefficient in deploying services, and there's nothing logical or reasonable about it. So it really does not comport with your goals and initiatives. It's the worst case, both in jurisdictional density shopping, going from 27 units under the county general plan to a requested 550 units in a sprawl development pattern. And it's also a new thing, a case of opportunistic permit shopping, so that both the county has a habitat permit in place, the city of San Diego, where they also could have tried to go, has a habitat permit in place, but Escondido does not. And we're really encouraged with our new leadership that that may change in the future, but when they made this decision to go this direction, we did not have it. If you look at map 1, you see that the remote, disconnected, far out location, it's not really near anything. It really is appropriately in the county general plan where it should stay. Map 2 shows you the project site and the MSCP boundaries. And you'll see that the bottom 2/3 are already in the adopted South County MSCP plan, and the northern third is in the proposed North County. Map 3 it's Exhibit A, urban sprawl footprint on the top of hills and steep canyons, which exacerbates the fire risk. Someone recently asked me, what's my definition of urban sprawl? Well, this picture is really it. This project has dragged on and on. Still, months after asking, the city has asked them repeatedly for information they need to finish the EIR, that they haven't provided it. It's very transparent that they're waiting for a sea change, waiting for conditions to change, and that's no way to plan a city. That's no way to plan a region. The board should not waste, the commission should not waste any more time on this project. It is hugely opposed by almost every environmental group, local tribe, and community groups. We ask that you direct your resources elsewhere. Your staff report says you can amend your work plans from time to time to reflect new priorities. There have been attempts made to work with the applicant on this. They've been rebuffed. And so we're asking you to remove this from consideration until either something more appropriate has been brought to you, or they comply with the county general plan, which we fully support, which they are entitled to do as the owners of the property. I guess that's my comments, and I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you. Next speaker?
Can everyone hear me if I just stand next to it?
That mic comes off. There you go.
Hi, everyone here. My name is Nisa Ely, and I am here representing the San Pasquale Valley Preservation Alliance. We're one of the community organizations that has been particularly focused on Safari Highlands Ranch, which is now called Harvest Hills. As Ms. Hunter just referenced, this is sort of the epitome of sprawl development. It's an extremely remote area, zoned for 27 houses. We believe this is sort of density shopping, looking around for a location where they can try to increase it dramatically, which is what they are attempting to do with 550 homes in area that's really doesn't support that. The project has been going on since the initiation for the request of annexation began clear back in 2014. The draft environmental impact report was delivered to Escondido and the public in late 2017. They received literally hundreds of letters and pages of comments from experts, individual groups, and different agencies and organizations. And 2+ years later, they have not proceeded any further other than to change the name from Safari Highlands Ranch to now Harvest Hills. But in the packet you received a moment ago, it demonstrates it's essentially the same footprint, same number of houses. It's basically just a marketing change to try to, I guess, uncouple themselves from Safari Highlands Ranch, which had gotten a lot of bad attention. So I would encourage you to, because it's been going on for so long, it's just the epitome of sprawl development that's unneeded and unwarranted in that particular area, to remove it from your work plan, to amend it and remove it from your work plan. There's really no point in having this thing linger at this stage. Thank you. I'm available if anyone has any questions.
Thank you. Keen, so the request is to remove this from the work plan.
Yeah, so the speakers are addressing two related items on your work plan, and just for the benefit, Commission, of the visual, if you turn to page 62, you'll see in priority order a couple of related items. One is we have identified the Safari Highlands project itself as an anticipated proposal, and then separately under number 9, we are working on a municipal service review for the Escondido region. Part 2 is the City of Escondido, and that is specifically to address the City of Escondido's interest in expanding their sphere out to include this Safari Highlands or Harvest Hills project site. 2 items here. First, any city, landowner, or resident can submit a proposal to the Commission, and it's our responsibility under state law to process it and then bring it to you for determination. That proposal is forthcoming, but as of today, it has not been filed with LAFCO. Robert Berry from my staff is still working with the city on the CEQA analysis and related documentation. Separately, Commission, you have a duty under state law to review and update all agency spheres of influence every 5 years. And we, as by way of a study schedule, targeted an Escondido regional review for this year. And as the speakers noted, we anticipate that bleeding into next year. So I think the comments are appropriate for us to have on our mind. I know Robert can add the speakers to our mailing list. I will just add one thing, Chair, because it is an interesting topic. There is no definition of urban sprawl, as I'm aware of, under state law and certainly LAFCO law. That will be a question that you will ultimately consider, not only for Safari Highlands, but for all proposals as they come to you. So,
Okay, thank you. Questions from commissioners? Mr. McNamara?
Since I will eventually have to vote on this, should I vote, am I eligible to vote on this? On the Harvest Hills project, when it finally makes it to Escondido?
It's just a work plan.
All right, so I just want to make sure there's no conflict, that's all.
Right, under Cortese Knox, if you're representing, if a project comes before us that involves your agency, the LAFCO law specifically allows you to vote on it, and it declares that when you sit here at LAFCO, you take the general public's interest, and so you will not be conflicted out.
Okay.
So as far as our responsibility, Joe?
I have another question after we finish this. No.
Okay.
Sorry.
So as far as LAFCO's responsibility, what we have in the work plan is what we're trying to accomplish. It's just one of many in the work plan. Until we have an actual application on file, then it will not be processed. But that's part of our responsibility. We don't make the land use decision. I understand the concerns, but there's the appropriate entities to deal with what you have raised with LAFCO. Our job is simply to look at the reorganization aspects, whether extending the sphere is good or not, whether annexation is a good thing or not. So, and I know you'll be involved in the process, you and probably others, I would guess. So, Supervisor Desmond, did you?
Well, actually, I did. Well, I had something on. I'm like Joe. I'm waiting for the next topic so I can chime in.
Okay, so is there a motion on the work plan? The recommendations is to accept the work plan and file it,
I have two questions on the work plan.
okay?
Since somebody pulled it, I'll ask my questions if I may. One is that I noticed there's 3 policy updates, but none of them include a policy update on inactive projects that are sitting around for us a couple of years with no communications between LAFCO and the applicant.
Actually, Commissioner McKenzie, it's just not well defined under number 20 or 19. We identify as update application procedures, and we had anticipated addressing your good question about when does a proposal time out at LAFCO, and we were going to bring that to you during that update. And it's still on our to-do list.
Wait a minute. 19 is update application procedure.
Yes.
Oh, that's,
Yes, that we were incorporating that issue, the policy question that you're raising. When does a proposal time out at LAFCO and become terminated? We were going to bring that to you as part of that update.
okay, so that I don't forget, is that going to be part of the minutes?
It will now.
Thank you. And then the other one is item number 4, and it has to do with the update on the MOU with the county.
Yes.
You and I had this discussion when I was chair, and those of us who were on the commission when we went in with the county, it was basically we got to find a home, and we got to find a home real quick, and we don't have time to really do any due diligence and searching and so forth. But when this came due, at least me, myself, and I were under the impression that we would be looking at other options. And especially when I go through the the expenses, and I look to see that the overhead, other than above and beyond what we pay for rent, is enormous. And talking to other EOs in the southern region that have LAFCOs about our size, we spend probably 10 times, 5 times more in administrative costs, not salaries, but administrative costs than others do. And I wondered if we're going to get a better deal than we have now.
So Joe, what would you like to have happen here?
Well,
What are you asking?
Well, I think if you look at what we're spending, and it's, I would say 72,000, but I'm not sure. I have to go back and look, but that number sticks in my mind. That's per month and not per year. And we're spending $6,900, $7,000, $8,000 on rent, which is logical and reasonable. But, I'm concerned about basically what I would call overhead that the county is charging. And it's been explained to me by Keene that that's the way they do it. All departments pay a share of overhead. And we're kind of
Well, so
an
there's
odd duck out.
Keene, you want to comment?
Yeah, two responses. One is on the MOU, myself and council have been working with county council on this topic, and we anticipate actually coming to you at the next meeting. That's just the MOU to define our relationship at LAFCO and the county. I'd like to, if it's okay with the chair, come back to the other topic about rent, because it is part of our work plan discussion under 6C. I think I can address those comments there.
Okay.
Just a real quick, I mean, it is part of the work plan, it looks like a high priority, and Diane, it's probably not a good time to raise the rent, but, yeah.
Hey.
But it is, I mean, do you have an estimated date on when this MOU, I see it's underway, do you have an estimated date of when you can bring that back?
We plan on bringing you a draft for consideration in April.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? On,
So on 5E, we need a motion.
we do.
I'll make a motion.
Thank you.
Second.
Is there a second? It's 2 seconds. Thank you.
Further to it.
Do we need a roll call vote on this? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. So now we'll move on to 6.
Can I jump in real quick? Just
Yes.
We had Mr. Kennedy from Rainbow come up here and say that he's going to be bringing forth a proposal. I've asked this of Keene before, but I want to get it out in public. I just want to know what restrictions possibly any of the board members on LAFCO have, knowing that an application is coming forward on the particular item, the Rainbow and the Water Authority, and then once that application is filed, what restrictions or obligations the board members have, or committee members have, with talking to the applicants.
Sure. A couple things. As I indicated earlier when I got a question about can someone representing an agency vote at LAFCO if the proposal involves their agency. And so in that situation, LAFCO law has made clear that doesn't block you from voting, so you can do that. So that's just a general issue. Now, there may be some more specific issues that may be more fact-intensive than generally. But so, for example, the general types of things that can cause a commissioner to have to recuse him or herself could include campaign contributions by anyone associated with the application. Those are very fact-specific, so if anybody has any concerns about that, please just reach out to me. It takes us a while to get through those detailed things and advise you on whether that would be an issue. There could also be what we call a common law bias issue. Again, very fact-specific, if somebody thinks that because of your participation with the other agency that you may somehow be biased. If anybody has any concerns about that, I really encourage you to contact me in advance so I can give you comprehensive analysis and advice before you're sitting here and you go, oh, wait a minute, can I vote or not? And so, generally speaking, when an application comes forward, just as you would with any application, you can speak with an applicant. In that situation, though, really, you should be receiving information, not providing it or prejudging the application. Also, if you do that, I would recommend that when the item comes before LAFCO, that you do disclose, I had some general discussions and so, so that it's part of the record, so the public has an opportunity, if they want to comment on anything, they at least had notice and an opportunity.
Okay, so, but we can meet with both sides on.
Yes,
that
you
issue.
can.
Okay. Before and after the applications.
Um, Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions? We'll move on then to public hearing items. First is 6A. You have a staff report, please?
We do. I will offer a few opening comments on this final report and related actions on the municipal service review for Valley Center before I hand it over to Linda. But Commissioner, you recall that this document came to you in draft form back in January and is now before you for two specific actions today. One is to formally receive and file the report, and then separately we have a draft resolution for you to consider adopting that codifies the written determinations that you need to make anytime you undertake a municipal service review. That said, as I like to remind the Commission, and more to the point the audience, the purpose of the municipal service review itself is to independently check in on how the Commission perceives the need, demand, and ultimately the adequacy of local governmental services in step with informing your other regulatory and planning responsibilities. In particular, you take this information and the first thing you do is you update all of the agency's spheres of influence, and you now do that every 5 years. So there is a tangible outcome here. In this particular case, as Linda will detail, we're looking at a 120 square mile area of Valley Center as LAFCO defines it, and that in of itself is a distinction in the three governmental agencies that fall under your jurisdiction. So with that said, I'm going to hand this over to Linda for the presentation, in particular to focus in again on the key conclusions and recommendations with those actions I referenced earlier on the dais afterwards. So, Linda.
Thank you, Keen, and good morning, Commissioners. As Keen said, this is the final report to the first draft that was presented in January. During this period in between the first draft, we did circulate it for public comment extensively. I sent a draft directly to the community planning group as well as their local paper, the Valley Roadrunner, I believe. So moving forward, we're trying to do a little bit different things with the map, things to do to make it more clear. But as you can see right now, all the districts are laid out on the screen, and I believe a PowerPoint slide in front of you. The red is the Valley Center region as a whole. Each district has been designated a color, the CSD being purple, the FPD being yellow, and the MWD being blue. So going forward with the CSD, as you can see, it is purple, and it was established in 1966. Their primary service is Park and Rec. The FPD here highlighted in yellow was established in 1982, becoming a standalone agency really in, I believe, the mid-2000s. And then lastly, the MWD, which was established in 1954. And please stop me if you have any questions. I know the maps can be a little confusing when they're all overlapped, like here. And now we're looking at the region as a whole completely together. And as Keene said before, our sphere of the Valley Center region expands about 120 square miles. About 29,000 residents live there according to our independent demographics, and this region is north of the city of Escondido and east of I-15. This will be kind of a brief overview of what we talked about in January, just because this report has not changed as a whole. There has been some technical changes, such as to Some of the board members do not receive per diem and things like that, but as a whole, the document is intact. From our last meeting in January, this region is expanding and its community character is changing to more residential uses. This puts more demand on the existing services provided as well as additional infrastructure needs. All the districts have had some sort of financial stress with the exception of the CSD. Their stresses are systemic and need further evaluation, and they have come to us with the talks of a reorganization. And these slides, I'm not going to go particularly through each item because we have talked about it at length before, but please feel free to stop me if you have additional questions. Number 5 has been modified a little bit to include otherwise including engineer, environmental, and economic considerations. We did recommend that any new development hook up to the MWD unless these circumstances prevent otherwise. So lastly, going forward, wrapping up my presentation, we do recommend proceeding. There are no updates for the 3 districts at this time. We have included 2 letters that were provided to LAFCO for feedback. One is included in your packet with the Parks and Recs in support, as well as a previous letter sent before the last draft from the MWD asking for modifications and clarifications, and then 2 additional correspondence in front of you that are not included in the final draft that will be, but they came at a later notice from a public consortium that is concerned about one of the recommendations and another MWD kind of modification. So I believe those districts are here today to talk more at length. This wraps up my presentation, kind of short and sweet, but I'm here for any further questions.
Thank you. Any questions before we go to the speakers?
I have a comment.
Joe?
Or you want me to make it after the speakers?
Yeah, just if there's a question now, we'll go to speakers and then we'll go to the
I have a
commission.
comment.
Kane?
So we have, we have, let's see here, 5 speakers. All speakers are allowed 3 minutes. Stephen Abbott, Joe Napier, Larry Galvin, Darcy LaHaye, and Gary Arand. By all means.
Please come forward, doesn't matter what order.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the commission. My name is Steve Abbott, speaking on behalf of the Seneca County Fire Districts Association this morning. And just one little section of language I wanted to call your attention to is on page 23, bullet 3 of the report. It's having to do with the recommendations, section 4.2. Bullet 3, and it's what it says is opportunities to share and consolidate resources between Valley Scenic Fire and Seneca County. We're continuing attention exploring these future opportunities consistent with LAFCO's standing policy. Facilitate the extension of the County Fire Authority in unincorporated Seneca County based on timing with community preferences. Is that last little section of language that I think is really, really important. And the reason being is that at the last meeting where this was discussed as a draft, there was a really good, healthy dialogue of what does that look like? Does that mean that this is going to be an active thing? Does this mean this is going to be just a consideration that's sort of out there? What does this look like? And I think Supervisor Desmond had made a comment, just to clarify, this means no hostile takeovers. And the comment was, yes, that's right. It's based on a mutual understanding and agreement with the local governing body and LAFCO. And I think that that's a really salient point moving forward in order to allow the partnerships that have evolved since the hybrid report, gosh, probably 15, 20 years ago and now. So I would just leave you with that comment in the spirit of cooperation. Thank you for your time. Unless there's any questions.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Darcy LaHaye, General Manager of Valley Center Parks and Recreation. This is not a hostile takeover for us. Our board supports a reorganization of the district and transition to a new county service area to directly draw on expanded services of county parks and recreation. Our board supports this.
Thank you. Brief and to the point. You have a question of her?
Yes.
Yes. Question of you?
Ms. Lahane?
Come back.
Ms. Lahane?
Oh, sorry.
There was a question, Ms. Lahane.
Joe?
Otherwise, she's gonna have to come up back at a later time. I just have a quick question as to what outreach has been done by your board for the, to the community. I noticed there's nothing on your website about it.
There is.
There is now?
Yeah.
Okay.
We posted the municipal service review with the recommendations. It's on our website.
Okay.
We've had it at every board meeting for at least 6 months. So yeah, we've invited the public. It's been in our newspaper on 3 occasions.
Okay, good. Okay.
Thank you.
I just didn't want to get down to the end of the road and have everyone say they knew nothing about this.
Next speaker, please.
My name is Larry Glavnik. I'm the president of the Community Service District in Valley Center, really the Parks Department. And what you heard from Darcy is absolutely correct. We've had little feedback, and probably the major motivation why there hasn't been, we're the deficiency in parks and rec facilities in Valley Center. And after 50 years, we've determined that a CSA is the only vehicle that allows us to go forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker? No next speaker?
Good morning, Commission. Joe Napier, Fire Chief, Valley Center Fire Protection District, on behalf of the Board of Directors. I'm not going to repeat what Chief Abbott said so eloquently. We would really like to have that item 3 reviewed in closer detail. And I think the word merit probably is the strongest indicator of how we should proceed with the existing micro and macro reports. Need to be pulled off the shelf and dusted off and really look at those numbers to make sure that there actually is merit for consolidation. The Fire Protection District and the County Fire Authority and all of our jurisdictional bordering agencies enjoy a wonderful relationship. We are already sharing in ways that we haven't in a number of years. And I think it's a testament to the leadership of the County Fire Authority, the leadership of our Board of Directors, and I really believe that Keene and his staff have done a wonderful job putting this MSR together for Valley Center. And the work has been collaborative. They've listened. There's a few things that need to be updated in the final report, and I'm sure that Linda has that on her list, just a couple of 3 things. But at the end of the day, we really want to make sure that word consolidation, which in some people has a little bit of fear in their heart in our community, to make sure that really deserves some merit, and that merit is quantified. And that's all I have to say this morning. Thank you very much, unless you have any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing none?
And Gary Rent.
Good morning. 2 things. I want to compliment Linda and the staff here on the great job they did on the MSR. They were very responsive to our questions and factual things that we discovered in the report. With respect to wastewater service, certainly, whenever we can expand the services at an existing treatment plant, the rules of economy of scale dictate that happen. But Valley Center is a large area, and so we have to look at the balance between distances from existing facilities and need for new facilities. So, also, I dug into rule number 4. I didn't know what that was, and certainly we'll coordinate closely with LAFCO staff on where we do recycling. I did point out we're an inland discharge agency. We don't have an ocean outfall. We don't have a land outfall, so we have to do reclamation. And the closer to the treatment plant, the better. So, but we'll work with Keene and his staff on that. So, overall, we're good with the MSR. And we look forward to discussing the sphere of influence at a future date. Now I want to switch to the recommendations with respect to the Valley Center Fire Protection District. I'm here representing a group called VC3. It's all the public entities that serve Valley Center, Parks and Recreation, Water District, Fire District, School District, CHP, Sheriffs. We meet quarterly, we coordinate, we share information about the community. Valley Center is an unincorporated community, but it's a very well-defined and tight-knit community. Part of that is the VC3 organization that pertains to all the functions that a city would provide in a community. So we came together with this letter to support an independent operation of the Valley Center Fire Protection District. The district is very well thought of in the community. It's very involved. It's an integral part of the day-to-day life in Valley Center. It's hard for me to imagine how consolidation or merging with a county-wide agency, the Fire Authority, could improve services in Valley Center. I just don't really think that's possible. So I want you to concentrate on the latter part of your recommendation there is it has to do with community preference and timing. And I really think that Valley Center would say, yes, we like our fire protection district, and we want to keep it an independent operation. Kind of maintains the community identity in Valley Center, which is very distinct and very alive. So, thank you.
Thank you, Gary. That's it for speakers, commissioners. Justin?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And thanks for all the folks who are coming from each of the districts, the CSD, the Fire Protection District, and the Metropolitan Water District, Valley Center, MWD, coming here today. And I think what you're really seeing is kind of an example of there is a consolidation going on that we're pushing forward today, and that's with the CSD, the Parks and Recreation, primarily because they came forward to us and said, hey, we understand, we're having trouble raising funds to manage and take care of the parks the way they should be. And so they came to us. It wasn't a hostile takeover or anything like that. And so I think we're taking and going forward with that consolidation the way we should. And I don't have any intention, particularly with the fire department, as long as the people are receiving the adequate services and the fire department is financially sound and we're not hearing complaints about lack of response times or things like that, then there's really, I don't see any reason to try that or move forward with that consolidation. But Kean, I have a question for you. On item 3, under the recommendations, where does say the future opportunities to share consolidate resources between the Valley Center Fire Protection District and the County of San Diego merit continued attention going forward. But then in item 4, under recommendations, San Diego LAFCO believes, and irrespective of prompts otherwise in statute giving overlapping boundaries, the 3 affected agencies exist and separate operations appropriately, appropriately serve the region, and preliminary analysis suggests exploring a regional consolidation is not merited at this time.
Yes.
So those two, one says there is merit and one says there isn't at this time.
Yes, they do, although they focus in on different topics. So
Okay.
in and of itself, anytime LAFCO does a service review and you have 3 agencies in one particular area, the powers to be at the state capitol asks this commission to consider creating one entity out of 3. And that's what they're doing.
All right.
And so what staff is advising is that it makes sense that all 3 entities' services remain independent from the others. The item 3, which has been the source of most of the discussion today, is simply staff acknowledging that as time goes forward, opportunities for this fire protection district, Valley Center, to look to sync up with the county fire authority makes sense based on community preferences and timing. And parenthetically, is consistent not with the hybrid plan of the county, but importantly, LAFCO has its own standalone document, the macro report from the 2000s, That document is our general plan, so to speak, on fire services. And in that document, it says, as the community needs come to form, if there are opportunities to expand either through functional or political consolidation into the fire authority, LAFCO should assist. That's our attempt here at number 3, to remind the communities that this option is here, and if the community wants us to help, we'll help. If they don't, we won't.
Okay, so I want to just emphasize here, based on timing, I don't think this is the right timing at all for moving forward, and because the districts right now are providing adequate services to the citizens and residents of Valley Center. And there is no community preference at this time. The community preference is to stay as is. So I just want to add, as far as item 3 is concerned, now is not the time, and I have not heard from the community that they want this consolidation. So, thank you.
Would you like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve agenda item 6A.
As recommendation,
with
as recommended, as the alternative one?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there a second? Joe?
I have a question of Mr. Rant.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Hey, on item number 5 on page 23, do you have an issue with that at all?
Well, I
That was-
haven't memorized it, so please help me with that.
Well, that's, you don't have it there? I thought you memorized them.
No, I tried, but I'm just
He knows
getting
3 very well.
I'm getting too old. What is number 5?
It has to do with, LAFCO recommends the County of San Diego require future development approvals connect to the Valley Center Municipal Water District's wastewater facilities and avoid the creation of new systems, which I'm assuming is creation of new septic systems in the region unless special or local conditions merit otherwise. And this includes engineering, environmental, and economic considerations.
Right, I did address that, and I'll get a little deeper into it. We have 2 wastewater treatment facilities, and certainly, when we can, we want to put new development to be served by those existing facilities. Valley Center is largely zoned 2-acre plus, and subsurface disposal, private septic systems are accepted and approved by the county. So we're not talking about mandating new homes built on 2-acre parcels to be connected to the sewer system. The point we made with LAFCO staff is that whenever possible, we're going to connect new development to an existing wastewater treatment facility, just because the economy scale are such that mandates that you do that. But certainly, in the size of our service area, 100 square miles, we could have situations where a development is approved remote from the existing facilities, and you have to look at the balance between what's the cost of bringing it in versus establishing a new system. So we're good with, they did accept some language. I think that last sentence is the language we put there, and we're fine with that. The recommendation makes sense.
It just looked like another study for the applicant to prepare.
It would be the incumbent upon the developer to demonstrate to us, and then we'd have to, certainly if it's questioned by LAFCO, we'd demonstrate, yeah, we've done the engineering analysis, the economic analysis, and it makes sense to connect or to build a new system to serve a development. So.
Thank you. Any other questions of the commission? I'll just make a quick comment. I'm really pleased to hear that there are some people that know about that macro study back in the 2000s, and Keen, you're up to date on it, and that really is kind of the guideline for the fire consolidations, or whatever you want to call it. As we started off, as I remember, Andy, with 65 agencies serving fire, and in some areas not served way back when, and then the goal was to look at the unincorporated area where there were opportunities to join some of those agencies, and a lot of them that have been joined, they've been dependent districts under the county authority anyway, the CSAs, but there's been no hostile takeovers, and I'm sure, as Jim indicated, as long as we're around, he'll be around longer than I will in this position, but there won't be either. It has to be cooperation, it has to be a partnership, and in the end, it has to be beneficial to the people in the particular area. So, but it's good to be aware of that because it is kind of our guidebook of where we've been going, what we've achieved, and I think that what you'll see in there, that the numbers that were presented, I think it was asked at that time for about 26 million a year for operations. We are well over 40 million per year on operations and maintenance, and we have 1.5 million acres under the San Diego County Fire Authority, and it seems to be working very, very well. So, Andy, did you want to make some comments? And I know you were here. Some of the other, Joe, I think you were here. But
I found mine so I could pull it out and read it.
Back in the old days.
We've
Back in the old
consolidated quite a
days.
few.
First of all, it's nice to see so many fire people here this morning. Wonder who's taking care of business at home, I'm sure their staff. A lot of strides have been made by fire districts in particular, and the Fire Chiefs Association as well as the Fire District Association. You should be commended for that. You put your shoulders to the wheel and help bring it all together. CAL FIRE certainly played a very strong role in that operation as well. It would be a whole different scenario here in terms of our coverage as well as the funding if CAL FIRE was not involved. CAL FIRE, at least back in my day when they were CDF, were not considered to be good friends, but glad to see that that's changed as well. One thing I would suggest, it appears that we're not going to be looking at any consolidations of fire agencies right now, but I would hope that the fire districts and fire chiefs here hopefully would step up as well, along with Herman Reddick and others. So take a look at where we are now. Is this the best that we can do? Are there improvements that can be made? With the idea, an open mind at least, that what we have right now is good, but it could be even better if some consolidations took place. So hope we don't have guarding of fiefdoms here. I don't sense that. I sense, especially with automatic gate and other things, the level of protection, both EMS as well as fire, is greatly improved. And as Supervisor Jacob pointed out, we had areas back in the day where there wasn't really any medical coverage at all, especially in the East County. So keep up the good work there, and it's nice to see your band together and here chatting, and hope that goes just beyond the focal point right now for this particular issue. And I'm sure that you're looking at how can we improve our operations on a daily basis. Thank you all for doing that.
Thank you, and I would ditto everything that Andy said. And I know that there are some functional consolidations that are occurring that are where they're beneficial, I think in Lakeside and some of the other areas in my district. So with that, we have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation as recommended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Roll call?
Yeah.
Here we go again. Roll call vote.
We don't have the little lights that we can just.
We're working on that. Raise your hand.
Commissioner Jacob?
Aye.
Gonna give us little hats. for
Commissioner
lunch.
McKenzie?
Yes.
Commissioner Desmond?
Here, or yes, sorry.
Commissioner Kersey?
Aye.
Commissioner Salas?
Here. No.
Catchy.
Commissioner Vanderman?
Yes.
Commissioner Willis?
Aye.
And alternate Commissioner McNamara?
Aye.
All in favor, the motion passes.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll go on to 6C, which is adoption of the proposed work plan and budget for 2020-2021. Keith?
Thank you, Chair. So before the commission is the first of eventually two formal steps we're asking for the membership to take to game plan for the upcoming fiscal year 2020-2021. And that means you have a resolution before you that, if adopted, would do two things, Commission. First, it would approve a proposed work plan directing your resources over that 12-month period. And then separately, it would approve a proposed budget to fund those directed resources. And again, the idea here is for you to approve these items with whatever changes you see fit, and then we'll go forward with a formal public review and comment period, and then come back to you in May for final action. That said, and just for the benefit of jogging through both of the items, it may be easiest, Commission, if you're looking at the documents themselves, and you can do that by scrolling down to attachment 1 of your agenda report, and specifically exhibits A and B. And I will start with the proposed work plan, which is Exhibit A. And on that document, you'll see that staff has identified 20 specific project activities for the fiscal year that range from administrative tasks to statutory undertakings and are highlighted by a top 10, right? And so Commission, the top 10 projects are those that we are most interested in tackling. They're the highest priority. The remaining 10 are also priority, but to a lesser extent than that top 10. And in that top 10, certainly municipal service reviews are once again reflected, as well as a few policy updates. I did want to point out that unlike the last 2 years when we bring you municipal service reviews to schedule, this year we're doing something a little different, and that is we, for the most part, are just holding still with the commitments you've already made. There's only one, or perhaps I think two, new studies that we're putting into the work plan. All of the other studies that are listed, these are existing commitments for a variety of reasons. We need more time to complete. A good example would be the Fallbrook Rainbow region. Also, and this is going to pick up on a couple of comments that Commissioner McKenzie made, in the work plan you'll see that there are a few policy updates, and that's headlined by something we refer to as LAFCO Rule Number 4. In fact, Mr. Arant made reference to it earlier. And this recommended update comes to you by way of your Special District Advisory Committee. In Rule 4, Commission involves your task under statute to provide a prescription in how all of you go about establishing and authorizing special districts service functions in service classes. The example being a district may be in the business of having a water function. You are responsible for deciding if it is a retail or a wholesale class. This sounds nuanced, but I assure you from the world of the Special District Advisory Committee, this is a hot issue. And the reality is your 1972 policy is not necessarily helping us anymore, and so we want to come back to you and update it to current statutes and practices. I also want to point out at the very bottom, I've identified under number 19 a review of office space options, and this comes back to Commissioner McKenzie's comment. I know that we are going to bring this item further up in the priority order because when I wrote this agenda report, I was under the impression we had an option with the county for another 5-year lease option. So I kind of in the back of my head thought, well, if we don't get to it, I know that the county will house us for another 5 years. After I wrote that, the county reminded me we're out of that option window. And so the process for the commission is to look at your spacing needs, to look at the cost, both staying with the county, which admittedly is probably our preference at staff, but then to look at what is the cost and what are the benefits of perhaps finding a space outside of the county. So that will be a task for the commission this year. Our lease, though, just for the benefit of wrapping a bow on this, we have a lease through August of 2021, but we don't have an option to extend. We have certainly the option of negotiating a new lease, but not an option to extend under current terms. So I'd be happy to go into more detail on the work plan itself, but let me just quickly talk about how we're going to fund the work plan. And that brings me to Exhibit B, the operating budget. Commission, for the most part, this is a status quo document. We're just taking our existing service levels and moving them into the next fiscal year. That does produce a moderate increase in our operating costs of about 1.9%, or $40,000 roughly. So to staff LAFCO and to fund all of our related activities, we'd be going from $1,916,000 this year to $1,953,000 next year. Just about all of that increase is tied to some changes in non-management salary and benefits. In particular, the commission pre-approved a COLA adjustment in step with what the county has done, and then also there is a couple of internal reclassifications I would like to proceed with. One is to establish a commission clerk position, something the commission would independently have to take up, but at least for the budget it would be funded. The last comment I want to make on the budget, Chair, if you look at page 2 in our operating revenue, certainly the majority of LAFCO's costs are funded by the local agencies, the county, the cities, and special districts. By way of your direction over the last 2 years, this budget also proposes that we reduce our use of reserves, going to what Commissioner Willis had brought up earlier in the meeting, from $72,000 this year to $50,000 next year. That means, though, Commission, that the contributing agencies, the county, the cities, and the districts, their share of the LAFCO cost is not going up by 1.9%, but rather 2.9%. Something that, again, I can get into more detail if the Chair and Commission sees fit. So, this is a public hearing. I know we have one speaker, Madam Chair, for this item. Staff is ready to go into detail as you see fit.
Thank you. Any questions before we go to the one speaker? Seeing none?
Laura Hunter.
Yeah, thank you again, Laura Hunter, and I'm just, this is kind of a forewarned is forearmed. Again, I'm wanting to speak to your proposal to do the amendment for the sphere of influence for Escondido. And relying on the EIR for your Escondido SOI updated, I think is a mistake for LAFCO. You've got a big dead weight in your boat and it's slowing you down, and it's called, again, the Harvest Hills Project. The EIR that's being done on both the SOI amendment and the Harvest Hills / Safari Highlands project is grossly deficient in the areas that you need it to be. Chairman Jacob is correct. It's not just me and Nisa alone. I'd like to pass out a letter of the opposition to the project, and we can pass that, and so that you know that the EIR for the Harvest Hills and the SOI, unfortunately, because these were wrote together, is very, very vulnerable. And it would not be good to hold up the whole Escondido SOI process because we have this very ill-advised project that's got a lot of opposition, potentially litigation, potentially be referended. And the SOI project, the Escondido, the larger project is going to get caught up in this situation. The law, it is very, very deficient. Law requires that all impacts be addressed as early as possible, but the DEIR hardly says anything about the impacts of the SOI amendment, does not evaluate the impacts for the reasonably foreseeable. It fails to consider consistency with your own LAFCO requirements, a gross omission, which makes the EIR very vulnerable. This project is in an area that qualifies per your regs as open space, and it's inconsistent with the RTP and the Sustainable Community Strategy. So I don't want to go over the whole thing, but I have brought Keena present. It's just one of 60-page comment letter against the project that I think you need to reflect, since you may be relying on this. We would request that instead you either remove it from the SOI sphere of influence or direct staff to look into what is the best way to deal with the situation where you have combined this overall SOI project under this highly controversial project that's still going to run into a lot of trouble, even if the applicants finally will get their information to the table where it needs to be. So we would ask to at least ask staff to look into that, and so that these things don't get caught up inappropriately. Thank you.
Thank you. So Keen, how are we going to deal with this? Is it, as the speaker said, a big dead weight in our boat?
I don't know if it's dead, but it is definitely a weight in the boat. But I had the benefit of speaking with Ms. Hunter a few weeks ago on this topic, which I very much appreciate. And so the question that Ms. Hunter is bringing to this commission, and again, this involves what we have in our work plan identified as number 2, which is the Escondido Regional Part 2 Municipal Service Review, is that by way of an earlier arrangement at the staff level, we agreed to allow the City of Escondido to prepare their side or their half of the Regional Municipal Service Review.
But this is before your time.
It was.
Okay, just so everyone knows that.
And there was rationale to that arrangement, and if the commission can humor me for a couple of additional seconds. When the city was first addressing the Safari Highlands project, they came to LAFCO at the end of 2016 or early 2017. And at the time, there was this transition occurring at LAFCO with the executive officer, but they needed to have movement on an MSR sooner than later because it needed to inform what the speaker has identified as a rather significant sphere of influence amendment for the city to take in this Highlands project area. Staff at that time agreed to let the city take over that portion of the project with the assumption that it would be done faster. Well, here we are. The city has not completed their portion of the regional MSR. We have. So the question that the speaker has identified for this commission is whether or not it's appropriate for LAFCO staff now to take back control of that portion of the study and move forward and present our own analysis. My recommendation to this commission is to allow this process to play itself out a little further. As I most recently, I think, spoke with, along with Robert, to the Community Development Department, and Mayor McNamara could correct me if I'm wrong, we are under the impression that they are bringing this topic to the City Planning Commission in the next few months. At that point, whether the city approves it or not, it will at least be in the pipeline to come to you. So over the next few months, we'll learn more, but my comment, my recommendation to you is to allow the agreement that was worked out a few years ago to play itself out a little further, and then at any time, Commission, you can come back and say, staff, take this over and get this done, and we will.
Keene, what would be the proper time for us to make that decision to theoretically take over the MSR?
I think December would be a fair test. The city has not completed the MSR by that point. I think in December, I think I would come to you on my own and say, let's take it over.
How much time have they had so far to do it?
Couple years.
Couple of years? Why wouldn't we take it over sooner then?
Their timing is specific to dealing with changes, political changes, so I don't think it's the document itself that is awaiting the preparation. It's changes in the environment in Escondido. I will remind the Commission there's a unique issue here. They have a specific project in mind. Typically, LAFCO does these agnostically without any projects in mind. So that's why the city has been tying their work to the developer Concordia's process in this. But again, Commission, in many ways, I think we have committed to the city to let them work this out. If the direction of this commission is today for me and Robert to be a little more forceful with the city and say, you've got 6 months, I think we can take that message and see what happens.
Commissioner McNamara, you probably have some thoughts on this, I would imagine.
Well, I don't think it's a secret that there was a change in the leadership in the city when this started and where we're at right now. And there is a lot of opposition to this project. And so, everyone here is very experienced in this. The Concordia is going to try to do what they can do to make this project successful. Those who are opposed it are going to try to do what they can. I feel that since we can't prejudge anything, I'm reluctant to say whether or not I think it will go through, but I do think that there are some hurdles that I find it, especially financially for the city, that I find the project to be successful. With that said, there is a lot of merit to, I think, maybe we do need to have this separation or give a deadline to the city from a LAFCO perspective and saying, look, you've got so many months, we're going to take it over.
Okay. Yeah, because we're only talking about the MSR,
right?
Not the project itself. So give it more time. Give the city more time.
I think Keene is right, is that the city is somewhat tied, whereas LAFCO, I think, would be a little bit of a forcing function to tell the city they need to get their part done, and if they don't, then LAFCO will take it over. Because, and look, you all have experience on how this goes. I mean, there's always, everyone is strategizing as to how they can get their project done and drag it out and see who's going to get elected and all of that. Everyone knows how that game is played. I'm at the point where I'd like to give the city some time to say, look, you've got, I don't know what an appropriate period would be, but to give the city some time, you need to finish your piece. And because we feel as though the whole project is taking too long.
Well, perhaps if the commission is agreeable, Keene could, excuse me, send a letter to the city, just advising the city that, that we're in a position now, you've had so much time to do this, it's not done, it needs to get done, and kind of put a time on it.
I think December is appropriate and
December is
they'll-
sooner?
and that,
60 days.
they'll need some money.
60 days?
We have 60 days to respond.
Yeah, I don't know what the appropriate time is. Jim, you want to
Well, I
weigh in
just,
on this?
Please,
being part of this, the wheels of government turn very, very slowly. And so I think December is probably a good time to I would like to have a
2020.
date. And so, I don't know, put a date like December 1st, December 31st, December 15th, make it certain.
How about that we have it on our agenda at LAFCO, the first meeting of December?
Okay, to
Do
determine
we
whether
have
we're
a
going.
December meeting?
Well, we would have a December meeting, but just for the benefit of clarification, would you want, so there's two options there. One is to allow the city to complete its portion of this study by December 1st or December 31st, or LAFCO will take it over. Chair, I heard your comment suggest that we would have the actual document done by LAFCO and present it to you in December. That would be doable, but then we would have to take some things off.
No, that was
Okay.
not my
Okay.
intent, but I think some communication needs to come from LAFCO to officially to the city of Escondido, indicating that we want this done, and it's not done yet, and they've had so much time to get it done, they still haven't gotten it done, and so we will be forceful in taking over that responsibility if they don't get it done by a certain date. I've heard December.
December 1st.
Why not December
Going
3rd?
once?
I would suggest December 31st, we put it on the agenda or even January 1st, that we put it on the December 1st agenda for a status update. They may need another 6 weeks to complete it. I wouldn't want to take it over forcefully when they're that close. Or they may need to dot some i's across some t's. But I think it's a good status report, but the 31st,
I think
they have it.
if you put December 1st and they need 10 more days, they'll send you a letter, hey, give us a 10-day extension.
Okay.
You know.
Our first meeting in December it is, unless there's another suggestion.
What's going to be at the first meeting in December?
Status
Our-
update.
That's a good question.
Either the report or a status update, one of the two.
Well, why don't I do this, and I'll defer to Robert Berry if I misspeak about my understanding where the city is, planning staff, but I think we can send the city a letter following today's meeting advising that by December 1st, we anticipate either they be completed with their portion of the study, or we will assume work, but then I can give you a verbal update at the next meeting as to their response to that comment. They may just tell us, take it over now, we're not going to make that deadline. So at least we can come back, Robert can come back at the next meeting with an update.
So if we take it back, is there money to be exchanged when they submit that MSR back to LAFCO?
You know, work that out.
Madam Chair,
Eddie?
question for Robert. You've been working with Escondido all along on this, right? What kind of motivation do you think they need in order to get this thing done?
Well, this project has been around for quite some time. There was a general plan update in 2012, I believe, by Escondido, and so the preliminary discussions with staff was to somewhat push forward the MSR and the Sphere update till after they had a chance to get the general plan update approved and vetted by their constituents through the election. That was completed. That put that project then in the sights for them to work forward in the city of Escondido. There are a number of other candidate areas in addition to Safari Highlands, now Harvest Hills, that the city has identified for potential sphere changes. So in the past, what we had done when we had drivers like this project that would require a comprehensive update versus an affirmation of the existing sphere, we would put the burden on those proponents to fund those studies so that the commission would not pay for those staff time. So part of the delay for this moving forward was the city's general plan update, but in addition, the project's problems getting through its services, fire number one, in terms of the county, the city of San Diego, as well as Escondido, having concerns on how that area would be served by fire. So we have taken somewhat of a backseat for that to allow that to go through the local approval process, including the secret review. We've provided comments, we've met with staff, but the project has evolved. The scrutiny has increased, the controversy has increased, and it is completely outside of the city's sphere of influence. That was prior to this current MSR cycle that has already started. So the change now is we're doing these MSRs in-house. We have a much more detailed and broad review of the services for each of the agencies. The city is, the developers have somewhat pivoted with us to work with the new requirements in this MSR cycle. But I think part of the delay is the project delay for the approval. Our MSR process can move forward to a certain degree without them. The issue is really more the sphere update and the need for addressing the sphere requirements we would have to justify as to why that would come into the sphere. And that's part of the development approvals. So that project is nowhere near being approved and having its CEQA approved. We would not address it until that point. So I think there's some value for us to work on the MSR in-house in concert with them, but the understanding of the justification for the sphere update is really the critical issue for that project. So I think us taking the sphere back or the MSR portion back wouldn't necessarily affect that, because there's still a question as to whether that would be included in the city sphere, given that the project has not been approved.
Well, do you think between you and Keene and staff, you can come up with a strategy to move this thing forward?
Well, the MSR portion, I think we could move forward. Again,
But I mean the whole thing.
Yes.
And is this symptomatic of something we need to address in the future with Escondido?
No, I think this is just a carryover from our previous administration and the way we were doing MSRs versus how we're doing it now.
Okay.
And so that project has just been in a 10-year process.
I'll
that's
put
yet
in
to be
cowboy
concluded.
terms, get her done.
Okay, so the communication will be then to the city of Escondido, as I understand it, that we're going to have this back on our December agenda, and we're going to let them know that in December we either expect them to complete the MSR or we will take it over and complete it. So, all in agreement? Yes. So we need a motion. I just want to make one comment, just listening to this, because this is a classic example of jurisdictional shopping. This project this property is in the unincorporated area, but yet the development is not being processed in the unincorporated area. So people who are here from cities, how would you like somebody processing something from your city in another jurisdiction? So this is not the proper way to do things. It should be processed in the unincorporated area, not the city, and that's why this is a big mess. And we will get it. I think you all will get it, I'm sure. But that's why the difficulty here, because it appears to be way out of sync with what's in our county general plan. So, okay. So we need
I'll make a motion.
We need a motion on the staff recommendation for this item, as well as the direction to communicate with the city of Escondido. Correct?
Second. Do we say December 1st?
Yes.
Okay, December 1st.
Yes.
I make a motion. Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Second.
Andy seconds. Any other comments? We need a roll call vote on this.
Commissioner Jacob?
Yes.
Commissioner McKenzie?
Yes.
Commissioner Desmond?
Yes.
Commissioner Kersey?
Aye.
Commissioner Salas?
Aye.
Commissioner Vanderman?
Yes.
Commissioner Willis?
Aye.
Commissioner McNamara?
Aye.
All in favor, the motion passes.
Thank you. Moving right along. 7A. Staff report, please.
Yes, very good. So I'm going to give the staff report on behalf of John Trailer, who's enjoying his first full month up in beautiful Reno, Nevada. And it is for the commission to take up a draft municipal service review on county service area number 135, or CSA 135. And just like the item before on Valley Center, again, Commission, this has been brought to you as part of your adopted work plan, and it ties into this task by the legislature to be in the business of independently checking in on the adequacy of local governmental services relative to community needs as you see it. And in this particular case, this is our first check-in on CSA 135 in over 10 years. It involves these two distinct service functions that the district provides. First and foremost, there is a public safety radio communication function of the district. This was actually what was established at the time that the commission approved CSA's formation back in 1994, and right now it's administered by the County Sheriff's Department Wireless Division. And then separately, there is a integrated fire protection and emergency medical service function. This was added to CSA 135 by way of this commission's approval back in 2008, and currently administered by County Fire Authority and with the help of a contract from CAL FIRE. And I think up on the screen you can see where these two distinct service functions are provided in San Diego County. The key comment here is, yes, there's certainly some commonality, but there's also important some distinctions as to where these services are provided between the two. Now, the report itself follows the format that you are getting used to, in that there's this agency profile that transitions from qualifying and quantifying the role of CSA 135 relative to things that LAFCO thinks about, and certainly that includes our take, Commission, on population projections, infrastructure needs or deficiencies, financial standing, and so on. And it's the agency profile that then leads us to an executive summary that is certainly, I think, the key interest to the Commission, that includes, among other things, what we think are the key takeaways, the conclusions. And of those conclusions, that brings us, in many cases, to offering up specific recommendations for the Commission to take action on, or in some cases for the agency itself to take action on. What I would like to do is just walk through the key conclusions and then highlight a couple of the recommendations, and I know we're going to have some comments from interested parties in the audience. So with that said, you can see the key conclusions summarized up on the screen. First and foremost, other than being able to share the same principal act and the same governance authorizations of a CSA, and in this case CSA 135, what is unique and interesting to staff is that there really is no substantive connectivity within CSA 135 with respect to these two core service functions. Certainly not in respect to how the agency goes about budgeting and administering these service functions. To say a different way, it really is almost as if there's two districts operating under one banner, and that has relevance to this commission. And then second, and this is specific to the public safety radio communication part of the shop, when the commission approved the formation of this district back in 1994, I think there was an expectation, and I think it's fair to say that that expectation has not been met. And in particular, when you formed this district, the expectation was that the county and the 10 participating cities would all go ahead and establish direct assessment fees to fund their proportional share of the 800 megahertz radio system that's operated. Well, as it turns out, and this took us by surprise, only 3 of those 11 agencies have ever gone forward in establishing that direct CSA 135 assessment within their boundaries. So that has relevance to us, and I'm going to come back to that comment in a bit. Now, in contrast, this is the third key conclusion. On the fire protection and emergency medical side of the shop, I think not only has the Commission's expectations been met, I think from your staff's perspective, there is still significant room to grow and expand. In particular, when you activated this district's fire protection power back in 2008, the thinking of the Commission was, let's allow the county to develop a county fire authority and fulfill what is referred to as a hybrid plan, but see it mostly as a funding and governance mechanism. As we can talk about in a little more detail, I think the fire authority has transitioned much more to a brick and mortar operation, and that has relevance to us too at LAFCO. Now, whether it's on the fire protection side or the fire protection side or the public safety radio side of things, I think it's fair to say our analysis says in either direction, the finances are in good shape. And we can use the fire as an example. The chair made reference to this in the last item. Over the 5-year study period in which this analysis is based on, the fire authority's budget has grown from 28 million to 44 million. But at the same time, and this is relevant to certainly LAFCO, the county has also maintained a 5% average total margin over that 60-month period. So it's certainly fair for us to conclude that financially, CSA and through the county is in good shape. So if we take these 4 conclusions together, it brings us to this 5th and seminal comment or conclusion from the Commission, and that is, it certainly seems to make sense that a reorganization of CSA 135 makes sense and is timely, and specifically to divide this entity into 2 and establish a standalone, still dependent, still being governed by the County Board of Supervisors, but establish a standalone fire protection district. And the particular benefits do, if you go down to the last page, the recommendations there, of course, but I want to pick up on this one topic and we can cover the other recommendations as well. But in recognizing that there is this opportunity for the fire authority to continue to grow and evolve, staff believes that there are these particular benefits up on the screen. Hopefully they're there. One more slide here. There we go. With the helpful acronym of FIRE spelled there, that are collectively captured by saying this is the logical next step for the fire authority in serving San Diego County, and in particular in the emphasis of the unincorporated area. All 4 of these specific benefits have been thought through in great detail. I'm ready to go into detail on all of them, but I just want to make sure that the Commission is aware that when we bring you this study, there was no preconceived conclusion. The analysis has brought us, though, to this point where we see that there is a new step for the fire authority to take, and again, it's as a dependent fire protection district. Now, certainly there's some other recommendations in the report that are important, but I want to make sure that we really focus in on that, because what I'm looking for the Commission today is to either say at least that you are good with this going forward as part of the public review and comment period, or if there is any concern or pause, for me to get that feedback now before I go out any further in this part of the study. So this is a public, or not a public hearing, but this is an opportunity to hear from people from the audience, certainly from the Commission, and I am ready to go into detail as the chair sees fit.
Thank you. Good staff report. Let's go to the speaker.
We have one speaker for this, Stephen Abbott. And if there are any other people who'd like to speak, please fill out a form and hand it to you. Thank you.
Well, good morning again, members of the Commission. So first of all, I have to congratulate CAL FIRE and County Board of Supervisors and LAFCO for taking this step. Boy, it's a long time coming. And before I forget, the most useful piece to think of, which is not my main comment, is you're going to look at this consolidation right now at a snapshot in time today, and based all your funding based off that. But what you have to think about is what happens 20 years down the road when build-out stops. And that becomes a very different economic model. So it's just something to put in the back of everybody's mind, because that does change the funding dynamic. That being said, my comment is relative to, again, the recommendations, page 21, again, bullet number 3, and what it says is CSA 135 via the County Fire Authority should continue to explore opportunities to partner with independent districts to maximizing fire protection and emergency medical services. This includes syncing fire prevention activities within the unincorporated areas under the common land use authority of the county. So if I understand this correctly, what this is basically saying is, look, make greater use of planning and development services to do fire prevention. In theory, that sounds like a great idea. Having spent some time as a fire marshal, having been the representative to the fire prevention officer section of San Diego County Fire Chiefs, I think that I would ask you to reconsider that, and here's the reason why. Development is becoming more challenging. What you see happening on the ballot is a great example of that today. And that takes a tremendous amount of work at the local level to build trust, to build relationships, to have conversations with homeowners and developers and landowners and so on and so forth. And the further removed those interactions are from one another, when you have to drive 20, 30, 40, 50 miles, those kinds of conversations just don't happen. Those kind of relationships just aren't developed. And in this day and age, an awful lot of the fire code happens in what you call alternative materials and methods. It's how you compensate for because there's no such thing as flat usable land anymore. Everything needs something to be mitigated or something to be managed. And you have to work through the fire code, work through all those options to come up with those kind of creative solutions. At the end of the day, we'll make that development safe for the community, and probably even improve the community as a whole. That relationship has actually existed for some time with, and the other fire agencies I know are aware of it. With the County Consolidated Fire Code, I think if that relationship had proven to be efficient, more probably would have taken advantage of it than have at this time. And my time is up unless there's any questions.
So, what is your request?
Well, I would ask you to reconsider the notion of
Take it out?
yes, or at least to modify it. I just don't think that is a concept that's quite ready for prime time yet. And I would suggest that a lot of that stuff is actually happening behind the scenes. I have a feeling a lot of this was based on the 2002 study.
I would tend to agree with you. I don't think it's necessary. In fact, it could send a wrong message to the other agencies too, and it is going on. No, thank you for that input, and I want to echo some of Andy's comments to thank all of those that are here from the fire service. This has been a long time in coming, and as I mentioned earlier, I think it was Andy and Joe and Harry, you were here too, that were here when this all evolved many, many years ago, and the Fire Authority was established in 2008 by the Board of Supervisors. I'm pretty excited about this item, I have to tell you. Having lived this from day one here at LAFCO and then with the county, and there's a lot that I could say, but I'll spare you all. But I think the right way to move forward on this is to separate the two. Keen is absolutely right. When this all started, it was because of the regional communication system and a desire to have all the other agencies participate in that. And as he indicated that not all did, but we have a regional communication system. County is investing even more. We're upgrading it for better coordination between all the entities. And for the San Diego County Fire Authority to become a dependent district, it's the right way to go. It is overdue at this point. But for me, it is kind of a culmination of a really excellent partnership with all the other agencies and a real success story. What was not mentioned with the numbers, even though we're 44 million annually and increasing that every year as a county as far as operations and maintenance, what was not mentioned was the one-time investment that we put in to this 1.5 million acre county fire authority entity, and that's over $500 million. That's expanding and building fire stations, it's more fire trucks, it's aerial firefighting equipment, and fire prevention activities, and there's a whole list of things if anybody cares to see the whole list and where that money went. But huge investment that the county has made, and my colleagues, I'm very appreciative, I know Jim is too, representing the unincorporated area where usually the big, well, Cedar and 07 fires, where the big fires started in the unincorporated area in our backcountry. So anyway, my suggestion, I'm happy to put this in the form of a motion, is to approve the executive officer's recommendation to separate the two entities and establish the San Diego County Fire Authority as a dependent district, and to get some additional input on that. I can't imagine anybody being opposed to it. There's a second to the motion, Jim?
Gee, can I just get a little more clarification on what Mr. Abbott was proposing to change?
Oh, and take that out.
Yeah, where is that in the,
include that.
I guess I missed that in the agenda
It was
item.
number 3.
yeah,
Kim, you want to
so,
read it?
And I know we have one additional public speaker, David Neeson, as well, but the determination or recommendation that's been referenced, it's on page 21 of the report itself. It's page 243 of the actual agenda packet, and I'll read it for the record.
Okay.
CSA number 135 via the County Fire Authority should continue to explore opportunities to partner with independent special districts in maximizing fire protection and emergency medical services in unincorporated San Diego County. This includes, and among other opportunities, sinking fire prevention activities within the unincorporated area and under the common land use authority of the county.
Why is it you want that?
Well, I would leave out the last part. One of the reasons, if it's offensive to any of the entities that currently exist, it is not necessary to be there. The talks are going on now. I mean, I'm not going to mention, but there's another large area that's already operated by CAL FIRE under another jurisdiction that could be separated out, and there's some conversation going on. So I think the point, if I understood your point, that it could be interpreted as the county fire authority trying to take over some other areas. I don't want that kind of a message out there when we're already working with other entities. It's a partnership. It's not like we're trying to take on more responsibility. The county fire authority doesn't need to take on any more responsibility. So it has to be an equal kind of a partnership. So Jim, that's the reason I take it out, because it's happening anyway, and we don't need it, and it could be interpreted as something that it's not intended to be.
Okay, and I'm okay with that. I just wanted, I guess, the collaboration and working together and making, training together, using the same radios and things like that, and as long as the district is upholding their end and doing good things. Okay, I'm fine with it. I just wanted clarification.
Okay, and we do have one other speaker. Dave, I'm sorry I didn't see it, so the motion was made.
That's okay. You pretty much took the words from my mouth. Dave Nissen with County Fire Authority. Chief Meacham apologizes for not being able to be here today, but wanted me to reflect to you that Fire Authority executive leadership, we've had these discussions with becoming and looking into becoming a dependent fire district, and we fully support what you're doing here today, and would like to encourage you to move this ball forward down the track, and we support all of the findings within the MSR.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Okay. Andy?
I think we need to look at the success of the program so far, starting in 2008 or whenever it began with the fire authority. And as was identified in the staff report by Keene, this is a multi-step process. And I think we don't need to rush into it. So we look at where we are now, take a look at the timing of today, as Steve Abbott pointed out, in terms of we're going to look at fire prevention and consolidating with other areas. I think that will become evident as it goes along. And also, as Supervisor Jacob pointed out, we don't need to complicate the process. Make it as simple as possible, get people's buy-in on board, and then look at things as they come up to determine whether there can be more efficiency. But focus on what we have today, work on making that better, whatever direction that takes.
Thank you, Andy. Anyone else? Mark?
I'm certainly supportive of the effort. I would just have questions about item number 4 on that particular part with the annexation of city lands. Don't necessarily need to get a big discussion now, so obviously it's going to be a lengthy process, but we'd just be curious as to what you have in mind there.
Yeah, so the fourth benefit, and staff is identifying it as a benefit to transition the county fire authority from a CSA to a fire protection district, is this ability to be able to directly annex city land. So the contrast under the baseline, if the fire authority wanted to annex land within the city, it would need the explicit approval, and I believe by 4/5 of the council, to adopt a resolution consenting to that action. What that does, though, is it neutralizes and moots the ability of a landowner or a registered voter from being able to go to the fire authority and say, I would like to annex my property, it may be in the city, into the fire authority. Speaking more holistically, CSAs are not intended under LAFCO statute to be really brick and mortar operations. They're intended to be more just financing mechanisms. And what we have seen from the fire authority is that they have made that transition. They are making policy decisions. They are actually physically going out through their contract with CAL FIRE and providing the service. So all 4 of these benefits get highlighted, but for the purposes of number 4, it is reasonable for your staff to assume at some point a city will hold its hand up in the air and say, we need to get out of being in the business of being a fire provider. It happened when I was in Marin County. The city of Sausalito said, we cannot afford this anymore. And they were annexed into a fire protection district there. So it just seems that it might not be an issue now, but at some point in the future, the city will look to the fire authority or maybe to another independent fire protection district and say, we need help. This is the avenue.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
So does the motion include withdrawing that last sentence out of item 3?
It includes deleting item number 3.
On item number 3 entirely?
Yes.
And just for the benefit, so this is being brought to you for discussion and feedback, so I think it's appropriate for us, as the commission has already gone through, to get a consensus that, as I hear you, you are good with the recommendations right now in draft form, but you are already also good with removing number 3 as one of our recommendations, which again was the issue about syncing fire authorities, fire prevention with the other districts. So that direction is most helpful.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. All those in favor?
So again, we haven't had any public comment on this yet.
Yes, we have 2 people.
Okay, I mean, prior to this.
Correct. So after today's hearing, we will circulate a notice to the agencies. We'll run a publication in a couple of the local newspapers in the unincorporated area as well as the UT, and we'll bring back whatever we hear in May.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Roll call this time?
No? We're really mixing it up. Anyone opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Executive officers report.
Very quickly, so we have, and this is just for the benefit of calendars, staff will be holding 2 advisory committee meetings over the next few weeks. The city's advisory committee, which basically consists of the city managers, will be meeting with LAFCO staff on March 13th, and then the special districts advisory committee will be holding a meeting with staff on March 20th, and I have no doubts, among other things, they are going to weigh in not only on your budget in your work plan, but we still have this ag policy update that I know the Special District Advisory Committee is waiting to comment on, and we will start bringing those comments to you as well, probably in the next few weeks. That is all.
Thank you. Any announcements, commissioners? Seeing none, our next meeting is April 6th, 2020, and we stand adjourned. Thank you all for coming.